I walked out of my family's Thanksgiving dinner, and they've been calling me nonstop ever since. I haven't answered. I can't. My hands are still shaking. My heart is still hammering in my chest. And if I open my mouth, I don't know if I'll start screaming or laughing. Maybe both. The worst part? I almost stayed. I almost sat there like an idiot, smiling through my mother's questions about when Emily and I would finally have kids, nodding along as my dad talked about refinancing his house. I almost swallowed it down, let it settle like poison in my gut, and pretended I didn't just find out my wife, the woman I have defended, loved, and given everything to, was cheating on me. But I didn't. It started when Emily walked into dinner late. Not just a little late, hours late. She breezed in like she had all the time in the world, kissed my cheek like she hadn't just left me sitting alone at the table making excuses for her, and acted like nothing was wrong. But something was wrong. The way she smiled. The way her hair looked too perfectly fixed, like she'd redone it in a hurry. The way she smelled different, like a cologne I didn't recognize. I told myself I was imagining it. That was before my phone buzzed. A text. No name, just a number I didn't recognize. For words, check her glove compartment. My stomach twisted. I stared at the screen, my pulse hammering in my ears. Someone had sent this to me for a reason. Someone knew something. I got up, grabbed her keys from her purse, and slipped outside into the cold. My breath was coming fast, my fingers shaking as I unlocked her car and opened the glove compartment. And there it was, a motel key card, a folded-up receipt. I picked up the receipt first. Dated today, 2 hours ago. 1 room, paid in cash. I sat there, staring at it, feeling my world tilt sideways. A buzzing sound filled my ears. I unfolded the receipt further and saw something scrawled on the back in rushed handwriting. A name. A man's name. I don't even remember walking back inside. 1 second I was staring at the receipt, my mind spinning so fast I thought I might pass out, and the next I was standing behind Emily's chair, gripping the back of it so hard my knuckles turned white. Emily. My voice didn't even sound like mine. She turned, blinking up at me. What? I held up the receipt. Her eyes flickered to it, and in that split second I saw it. The panic. The flash of recognition. The moment she realized she had been caught. But then, just as quickly, she smoothed her expression into something cold, bored, like I was the one inconveniencing her. What is this? I asked, voice low, controlled. She glanced around, clearly aware that my entire family had gone silent, watching us. And then she had the audacity to roll her eyes. A receipt? She said flatly, reaching for her wine glass. Are we really doing this now? My jaw tightened. A receipt for a motel room. From today. 2 hours ago. Who is he? She sighed. Like she was annoyed. Like she was bored of me already. I don't know what you're talking about. I laughed. I actually laughed. You don't know what I'm talking about? I held up the receipt between 2 fingers. You don't recognize this? You don't remember paying for a motel room today? She gave me the smuggest, most infuriating smirk I've ever seen in my life and said, maybe it's yours. Something in me snapped. I don't even know what I was going to say, but my mother's voice cut through the air. Emily, she said, her tone sharp. What's going on? Emily exhaled, dramatically setting down her wine glass, and turned to face my mother like she was the one being ambushed. I don't know, Carol. Maybe your son should stop going through my things and making up stories in his head. And that's when it happened. That's when my father, the most patient, mild-mannered man in the world, stood up so fast his chair nearly tipped over. Enough, he said, his voice like a gunshot. The room went so silent I swear I could hear my own heartbeat. You think we're all stupid, Emily? Emily opened her mouth, but he didn't give her the chance. I saw you, he said. Her smirk faltered. What? I saw you. His eyes were locked onto hers, unflinching. At the gas station by Route 9, 2 hours ago, getting out of a car that wasn't yours. My stomach dropped. I turned to him, my mind barely keeping up. What? She got out of a black SUV? My father said, still staring at Emily. I was filling up the truck when I saw her. She didn't see me. Emily's mouth opened, closed, then opened again. Dad, I said, my voice hoarse. Are you sure it was her? His expression was stone. 100%. Emily let out a breathy, nervous laugh. Okay, this is insane. You guys are literally ganging up on me. I turned back to her, something burning in my chest. Who was in the SUV? She scoffed. I don't know. A friend. Give me a name. Oh my God. You are being so dramatic. She looked around at my family, as if expecting someone to back her up. But no one said a word. I stepped closer, my voice low and shaking with barely restrained fury. Say his name, Emily. She hesitated, and that was all I needed to see. I dropped the receipt on her plate, picked up her car keys, and walked out. Now I'm sitting in my car, ignoring my buzzing phone, staring out into the cold night, my mind replaying the last 10 minutes over and over. Emily is a liar, a cheater, and worst of all, she didn't even have the decency to pretend to be sorry. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I do know one thing. I'm never walking back into that house as her husband again. That I don't know how long I sat there, gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingers ached. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Calls from my mom, my dad, even my sister. But not Emily. Not a single call from my wife. That told me everything I needed to know. I should have driven away. I should have just left. But I couldn't. My brain was still catching up to reality. Still piecing together the last hour. Still trying to comprehend how I had gone from celebrating Thanksgiving with my family to finding out my wife was sneaking off to a motel in the middle of the damn day. The worst part? I still didn't know who he was. The name on the back of the receipt. I didn't recognize it. But the fact that it was there at all meant something. Meant everything. A sharp knock on my window jolted me out of my thoughts. My dad. I could see my mom standing a few feet behind him on the porch, arms crossed, face pale. I rolled the window down, barely able to look him in the eye. Son, he said, his voice steady, but there was something in it, something hard. You need to come inside. I let out a short, bitter laugh. Why? So Emily can gaslight me some more. She left. I blinked. What? Got in her car and took off. Didn't say a word. Just grabbed her purse and walked out like she had somewhere more important to be. Of course she did. Of course she ran. That was Emily. When things got uncomfortable, when she was cornered, she didn't fight. She escaped. I had seen it before in little ways. Arguments where she would suddenly decide she was too tired to talk. Moments when she'd turn her phone face down whenever I walked into the room. But this was different. This was proof. Where do you think she went? I asked, my voice hollow. Dad didn't hesitate. Back to him. The words landed like a punch to the ribs. I swallowed, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Did Mom see the receipt? He nodded. We all did. I exhaled through my nose, my vision blurring with anger. So what now? You tell us. I didn't answer right away, because honestly, I didn't know. What I wanted to do was go home, pack her things into garbage bags, and throw them onto the lawn. But I also wanted to know who the hell this guy was, how long it had been going on. And I knew Emily. She wasn't going to just admit it. Not easily, anyway. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and stared at the receipt again, at the name scrawled on the back. There was one way to find out. I opened a search bar and typed in the name, and what came up made my blood run cold. The moment the search results loaded, my stomach twisted into knots. The name on the receipt, Daniel Carter, wasn't some random guy. Wasn't some nobody. He was someone I knew. Someone I had trusted. His face stared back at me from a LinkedIn profile, a corporate headshot with that smug, punchable grin I'd seen 100 times before. My hands clenched around my phone so tight I thought I might crush it. Daniel Carter. My wife's boss. I felt like the air had been knocked out of my lungs. My vision blurred at the edges. My pulse hammering so hard I could hear it in my skull. This wasn't some fling. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was calculated. Emily had been screwing around with her married boss. I swiped through the search results, my thumb moving on autopilot. And that's when I found it, a picture. A corporate event from 3 months ago. A group of people smiling for the camera. There she was, standing right next to him, her hand resting just a little too casually on his arm. His wedding ring glinting under the lights. 3 months ago. 3. How long had she been lying to me? A fresh wave of rage hit me like a freight train. My hands were shaking. I needed to move, needed to do something before I lost it completely. I shoved my phone into my pocket and got out of the car. My dad was still standing there, watching me carefully. "Everything okay?" His voice was calm, measured, like he already knew the answer. "No," I said, my voice hoarse. "Not even close." He waited, let me breathe through the anger, through the betrayal clawing up my throat. Then I said it. "Her boss. She's screwing her married boss." His face darkened. I had never seen my father look at someone the way he looked at the ground in that moment, like he was imagining crushing someone beneath his boot. "Do you know where they are now?" he asked. I thought about it. The motel. The receipt was from today. If Emily had bolted from dinner, she sure as hell wasn't heading home. There was a good chance she was going right back to him. I exhaled sharply, chest heaving. "I think I do." For a second, he just stared at me. Then he nodded. "I'll drive." The words hit me hard. Not because I needed a ride. Because in that moment I realized my father wasn't just my dad. He was ready for war. We got in his truck and peeled out of the driveway, leaving my buzzing phone and my family's stunned faces behind. Because if Emily thought she was going to walk away from this untouched, unscathed, she had another thing coming. The drive to the motel was dead silent, except for the sound of my own blood pounding in my ears. My father's hands were tight on the steering wheel, his jaw locked like he was chewing on something too bitter to swallow. I stared out the window, my mind racing. Emily, my wife, cheating. Not just with anyone, but with her boss, a married man, at a damn motel on Thanksgiving Day while I was sitting at my family's table, defending her. How long had she been laughing behind my back? How many times had she come home and kissed me with his cologne still on her skin? I felt sick, but the nausea wasn't stronger than the fury curling in my gut like a living thing. "We doing this smart or loud?" My dad's voice cut through the tension, rough like gravel. I exhaled through my nose. "Smart. First." He nodded once, turning into the motel parking lot. It was a cheap, rundown place with flickering neon lights. The kind of place where no one asks questions. The kind of place where people go to hide. I pulled the receipt out of my pocket and checked the room number. 214, second floor, end of the row. We got out of the truck, moving in silence. My father stayed a few steps behind me, letting me take the lead, but I could feel the heat of his presence at my back. Steady, unshakable. I climbed the stairs, my legs buzzing with adrenaline. Stopped in front of the door, and that's when I heard it. Laughter. Emily's laugh. Light, carefree, happy. It hit me like a punch to the ribs. I had barely heard her laugh like that in months. But here, with him, it flowed out of her like it was the easiest thing in the world. I felt my father's hand land on my shoulder, grounding me. A silent reminder. Control it. Don't lose it. Not yet. I raised my fist. Knocked twice. Silence. A pause. Shuffling. A low, murmured voice. Then, the door cracked open. Emily's face appeared, her expression going from confused to horrified in an instant. I didn't give her time to react. I shoved the door open hard, stepping inside. And there he was, Daniel Carter, standing in the middle of the room, half-dressed, his shirt unbuttoned, his belt undone. For a second, none of us spoke. Emily's mouth opened and closed, her face drained of all color. Daniel stumbled backward, hands up like he was about to negotiate his way out of a war zone. "Wah, what the hell, man?" he stammered. My heart was hammering, my fists clenched. I wanted to knock his teeth down his throat. I wanted to make him feel the way I felt in that moment, small, pathetic, stupid. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I turned to her. Emily, my wife, the woman who had looked me in the eye just an hour ago and acted like I was crazy. She swallowed hard, her hands shaking. "It's not." I laughed. Loud, sharp, ugly. Don't even start." She flinched. "Let me explain." "Explain what? That you've been sneaking off to motels with your boss? That you've been screwing him behind my back while I was too stupid to notice?" I gestured wildly around the room, my voice rising. "What exactly do you think you can explain, Emily?" Her mouth opened, but Daniel, the idiot, chose that moment to step forward. "Hey man, I get that you're upset, but I turned on him so fast he actually took a step back. You don't get to talk, I said, my voice dangerously low. You don't get to say a single damn word. His face paled. Listen, it's not like. My father, who had been completely silent until now, let out a dark chuckle. Daniel's eyes snapped to him. For the first time, I saw something in his expression. Not guilt. Fear. My dad took a slow step forward, arms crossed. What were you gonna say, Daniel? His voice was calm. Too calm. That it's not what it looks like? That you respect my son. He tilted his head. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're standing in a motel room with your pants half off. Daniel swallowed hard. Emily turned to me, her hands up. Baby, please. Don't. Call me. That. My voice shook with barely restrained rage. Her face crumpled. For a moment, she looked like she might actually cry. I wasn't falling for it. Not this time. I turned to Daniel. Does your wife know? The color drained from his face. Emily's breath hitched. Don't. Oh, now you don't want to talk? I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Funny. You didn't have a problem talking when you were spreading your legs for your married boss. She gasped, her eyes flashing with rage. Rage. Like she was the victim. You're being cruel, she snapped. Something inside me snapped right back. I leaned in close, lowering my voice to something just for her. Cruel, I repeated, my lip curling. You want to talk about cruel, Emily? Cruel is making me sit at my family's table, smiling, pretending everything is fine, while you're in some disgusting motel bed with him. Cruel is lying to my face over and over again, making me feel like I'm crazy when I start to suspect something. Cruel is what you did. She had no answer for that. I took a slow step back, exhaling sharply. My hands were still shaking, but not from nerves. From clarity. This was done. We were done. I turned to Daniel. Your wife will know by morning. Count on that. His face crumpled like wet paper. Then I turned back to Emily, my wife, the stranger in front of me. You deserve each other, I said coldly. Rot in hell. And then I walked out, because I was done wasting my time on someone who never deserved me to begin with. I don't remember walking down the stairs. I don't remember crossing the parking lot. My body was moving, but my mind was somewhere else. Still in that room, still watching Emily scramble for an excuse, still watching Daniel Carter turn into a coward right in front of me. The motel door slammed shut behind me. I didn't turn around. Didn't care if Emily followed me. Didn't care if she fell off the face of the earth. My dad was right behind me. Neither of us spoke as we climbed into the truck. The second the door shut, he let out a long, slow breath and muttered, That woman is evil. I didn't answer. I was too busy pressing my palms into my eyes, trying to stop the headache splitting through my skull. Emily was gone. Not physically. She was probably still standing in that motel room, trying to convince Daniel Carter he was worth throwing her marriage away for, but in every other way she was gone. The woman I thought I married? She didn't exist. Maybe she never had. I exhaled sharply, trying to ground myself, but the rage was still there. The betrayal, the humiliation, the overwhelming need to destroy something. She didn't even try, I muttered. My dad glanced at me. What? She didn't even try to lie? I said, laughing darkly. Didn't even try to make me feel better. I let out a shaky breath, shaking my head. She just looked annoyed, like I was the one ruining her night. My dad tightened his grip on the steering wheel. That's because she checked out of this marriage a long time ago. I swallowed the lump in my throat. And I didn't see it. Because you loved her, he said simply. And when you love someone, you don't go looking for signs they don't love you back. Silence. Then my phone buzzed. For a second, I thought it might be Emily, but no, it was worse. Daniel Carter's wife. I stared at the screen. What the hell? Dad glanced over. You gonna answer? I hesitated. Then, before I could overthink it, I swiped to accept. Hello. A beat of silence. Then, how long? Her voice was sharp, controlled, but there was an edge to it like she was holding back a scream. I clenched my jaw. I just found out tonight. She exhaled hard, like she had been punched in the gut. You're sure? I caught them at the motel 10 minutes ago. Silence. Then she said, That piece of garbage. That absolute. She cut herself off, her breath shaky. I knew something was off. I knew it. The late nights, the sudden business trips. God. I almost convinced myself I was imagining it. I let out a bitter chuckle. Yeah, same. Another pause. Then, are you divorcing her? I didn't even hesitate. Yes. Good, she said, her voice like steel. Because I'm about to ruin his life. I blinked. What? You don't understand, she said, laughing. But there was nothing funny about it. I've been waiting for an excuse. He thinks he's so careful, so smart. Well, guess what? I have every bank statement, every expense report, everything. And I'm about to take him for every single cent he's worth. I sat there stunned. Then I smiled. Because for the first time all night, I felt something close to satisfaction. Let me know if you need anything, I said, my voice dark with amusement. Oh, don't worry, she said. I will. And then she hung up. I stared at my phone for a second, then looked at my dad. He raised an eyebrow. That sounded like revenge. I exhaled slowly. Yeah, I think it was. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I actually felt good. The drive back home felt surreal, like I was watching my life happen from outside my own body. My dad didn't speak much, and I didn't either. What was there to say? Everything I thought I had, gone. My marriage, my trust, my dignity. Emily didn't even fight for me. Didn't beg. Didn't try. Because she never intended to. By the time we pulled into my driveway, my hands had stopped shaking, but the rage still burned under my skin. The house was dark, quiet, too quiet. It used to feel like home. Now it just felt like a crime scene. She's probably still at the motel, Dad said, killing the engine. Good. I unbuckled my seatbelt, jaw tight. I pushed the front door open and stepped inside, flicking on the light. My whole body felt heavy. The couch where we used to sit and binge-watch shows together. The kitchen counter where she used to hum while making coffee. The hallway leading to our bedroom. I clenched my fists. Not anymore. My dad lingered in the doorway, watching me. You want me to stay? I shook my head. No. I need to do this alone. He studied me for a second, then nodded. Call if you need me. I will. I shut the door behind him and exhaled hard, pressing my hands against the wood. The silence was suffocating. Then footsteps on the porch. I turned just as the doorknob twisted. The door swung open, and there she was. Emily, hair a mess, eyes wide, cheeks flushed, breathing fast, like she had been running. And when she saw me standing there, she smiled, like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just gotten caught barefaced in a motel room with her boss. Baby, she said breathlessly, stepping inside. We need to talk. I didn't move, didn't blink, just watched her. She shut the door behind her like she still lived here, like she still belonged here. Let me explain, she said, reaching for my arm. I stepped back. Her face flickered, just for a second. Then she sighed, crossing her arms. You shouldn't have come to the motel. I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. That's what you have to say? She tilted her head. What did you think would happen, huh? That I'd cry? Beg for forgiveness? She scoffed. I wasn't happy, okay? And you didn't even notice. I stared at her, something dark curling in my chest. So that makes it okay? She shrugged. My hands tightened into fists. How long? She sighed dramatically, rubbing her temple like this was hard for her. A few months. So while I was cooking her dinner, while I was kissing her goodnight, while I was planning our future, she was already planning her escape. I took a slow breath. Did you ever plan on telling me? Her lips parted, like she might actually give me some kind of half-truth. But then she smirked. That smirk. That goddamn smirk. Does it matter? She said, tilting her head. Something in me snapped. You know what? You're right. My voice was eerily calm. It doesn't matter, because this, I gestured between us, is over. Her smirk faltered. You're being dramatic. I turned, walked down the hall, and yanked open the bedroom closet, pulled out her suitcase, threw it on the bed, and started grabbing her things. Seriously? She snapped, storming in after me. You lost the right to an opinion, I said coldly, tossing handfuls of her clothes into the suitcase. She let out an exasperated laugh. Wow, I thought you'd at least want to talk like adults. Adults don't cheat, I said. They leave before they destroy everything. She rolled her eyes. You really think you're a saint? I stopped, turned, met her gaze head-on. No, I said quietly, but I was good to you, and that still wasn't enough. For the first time, her face twisted, like she didn't like what she was seeing in me, like she was finally realizing I wasn't the same person who spent years worshipping the ground she walked on. I zipped the suitcase, grabbed it off the bed, and shoved it into her arms. Get out. She hesitated, just for a second. Then she scoffed, flipping her hair over her shoulder. You'll regret this. I laughed, actually laughed. Emily, I said, stepping aside to open the door. I regret ever meeting you. Her nostrils flared, but for once she had nothing to say. She stormed out, dragging the suitcase behind her. I waited until I heard the sound of her car peeling out of the driveway before I let myself breathe again. And when I did, it felt like fresh air for the first time in years. The second Emily's car disappeared down the street. A strange silence settled over the house. Not the heavy, suffocating silence from before, but something different, something lighter. I stood there in the middle of the living room, staring at the empty space she had left behind. The scent of her perfume still clung to the air, but it was already fading, just like she was. I exhaled slowly, rubbing a hand down my face. I should have felt broken, crushed, destroyed, but I didn't. I felt free. I walked to the kitchen, opened the fridge, and grabbed a beer. My hands were steady now. My mind was clear. I had done it. I had faced her. I had thrown her out, and I hadn't let her twist it, hadn't let her manipulate me into thinking this was somehow my fault. I wasn't the fool in this story. She was. My phone buzzed again. I expected another call from my mom, but when I looked at the screen, I froze. It was Daniel Carter's wife. I stared at the name for a second, then picked up. Hello. I did it, she said. I blinked. Did what? I told his parents, she said, her voice shaking with something that sounded a lot like triumph. I told everyone. His mom is screaming at him right now. His dad called him a disgrace. His sister said she always knew he was a piece of garbage. I sat down, rubbing my jaw. Damn. Oh, and did I mention? She continued, her voice sharper now. I threw all his clothes on the front lawn. Every last piece. Even the expensive suits. It's raining, by the way. I let out a low whistle. You don't mess around. She laughed. And this time it wasn't bitter. Neither do you. I hesitated. So what now? She sighed. But it wasn't a sad sigh. It was relieved. Now, I finish what I started. I already called my lawyer. I want everything. He's going to crawl out of this marriage. I smirked. Sounds like a plan. Yeah, she said, then paused. And you? I exhaled, staring at the half-packed suitcase in the corner, the emptiness of the house. I don't know yet, but whatever it is, it won't involve Emily. Good. Another pause. Then, you know what's funny? She said, her voice laced with something almost amused. What? They probably think we're the villains, she said. Emily and Daniel. I bet they're sitting somewhere right now playing the victims, telling themselves we overreacted. I snorted. Yeah, because exposing cheaters is the real crime here. Exactly. She laughed again, softer this time. Well, I won't keep you, but if you ever want to grab a drink and laugh about our exes ruining their own lives, let me know. I smiled. Really smiled. I just might take you up on that. We said our goodbyes, and when I hung up, I realized something. For the first time all night, I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. And damn, it felt good. The next morning, I woke up to peace. No Emily. No tension. No fake smiles hiding 1,000 lies. Just quiet. And I liked it. I got out of bed and walked through the house, half expecting to see her standing in the kitchen, pretending nothing had happened. But all that was left of her was an empty space where she used to be. Her closet, half empty. Her bathroom counter, clear. The only thing she left behind was her old hairbrush and a few bobby pins scattered in the corners of the bathroom, like a ghost that forgot to take all its things before vanishing. I brewed a cup of coffee, sat at the table and let it sink in. I was free. And then my phone buzzed. I picked it up and saw the notification. A text from an unknown number. Emily. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then opened the message. Emily, I hope you're happy. You humiliated me in front of your whole family. Was that what you wanted? I laughed. Actually laughed. This woman. This delusional, narcissistic woman. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't ashamed. She wasn't even embarrassed that she got caught. She was angry at me, because in her mind, she wasn't the villain. She was the victim. I took a sip of my coffee, letting the bitterness settle on my tongue, and then I typed my response. Me, I am happy. Happier than I've been in months. You did me a favor, Emily. You set me free. I didn't wait for her reply. I blocked her number, set my phone down, and leaned back in my chair. Outside, the sun was shining. The air felt crisp, fresh, a new beginning, a clean slate. And as I sat there, breathing in the quiet, one thought settled in my chest. I survived this, and I would never let anyone like her into my life again. Because now, I knew my worth, and it was so much more than she ever deserved.